If you want to get better at clear thinking and problem solving and critical thinking and decision making and solving those literal and metaphorical treasure hunts, then maybe you should go to sleep. That's what I want to talk about in this video. There was a study that was published in February of 2026. The study came out literally within a few days of this video being released, and it was from a research lab at Northwestern University. I believe there was also a researcher from Notre Dame University who was part of the study conducted there. And they decided to dive into this topic that goes back a long time. If you go throughout history, you can see in classical literature and other places the advice of sleeping on it. When you have a problem or something you're trying to figure out, to get some good sleep. And a good night's sleep can be very helpful for clear thinking and problem solving. And we do know that sleep hygiene and sleep habits are absolutely an important tool in your clear thinking toolbox. But this study took it to a whole nother level. So here's what they did. They decided to find people who had a history of lucid dreaming. So these are people who have claimed the ability to be aware that they're in a dream. So you're in the middle of a dream and you're actually conscious of what's happening, and you're able to maybe even manipulate the dream to some extent. And I believe that they chose these 20 people because of part of the study that I'll get to in just a second. I'm not convinced, though, that lucid dreaming is a critical part of the study, but who knows? It's just one study with 20 people, so time will tell. But what they did is they brought in the 20 people, and they brought them in the evening, and they introduced them to a series of very difficult puzzles. Each puzzle lasted 3 minutes, and during each of those puzzles, they played a unique soundtrack, a piece of music that was associated with that one puzzle. So you go to puzzle 1, there's music playing, you're trying to solve it. At the end of the 3 minutes, you go to puzzle 2, a new distinct piece of music, and so forth, going through the series of 6 puzzles. They were very difficult puzzles, meaning that people were unable to solve most of them. And so after that, then they would go to sleep, and they were monitored and tracked. And what they were looking for was when the people went into the REM sleep, that rapid eye movement sleep, and they had them connected to devices that allowed them to predictably identify REM sleep. And in these days, you can even use smartwatches and other kinds of devices that give you a rough estimate of the different types of sleep that you're having at different times of the night. So this was a much more sophisticated process so they could narrow it down. Now, because these people had a history of lucid dreaming, they did something else that was interesting. They wanted to be able to have some kind of communication with the lucid dreamers while they were dreaming without waking them up. And so they came up with a simple protocol where they did some kind of sniffing or breathing process so that the lucid dreamers could indicate to the researchers that they had received the cue. Now, what's the cue? That's the next part. So what they did then is they got people to the REM level of sleep, and then they reintroduced them to the 50% of the unsolved puzzles. And with each of the unsolved puzzles, they didn't actually introduce them because the people are asleep. Instead, they simply played the music that was associated with that unsolved puzzle. So remember before, they had these series of puzzles while they were awake. There was a soundtrack behind each one. And so now what they're doing is in the REM sleep, they're going to play a soundtrack associated with an unsolved puzzle to try to cue people to start thinking about that unsolved puzzle during their REM sleep. People woke up the next morning, and then they were given a chance at the difficult unsolved problems or puzzles again. And here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Now, of the 20 participants, they were able to verify through that sniffing protocol and people's alleged memory of their dreams that there were 12 of the 20 indicated that they remembered dreaming about the unsolved puzzles. And of those 12 of the 20, they looked at the 50% of unsolved puzzles that had been cued with music, And then they compared the 50% of unsolved puzzles that had not been cued during their sleep. But the people had to try to solve again that morning all of the puzzles, the ones that they had been prompted to think about in their sleep and the ones that they had not been prompted to think about. And 42% of the unsolved puzzles that were cued were solved. But only 17, I think it was somewhere between 17 and 20% of the unsolved puzzles that were not cued during REM sleep were solved. So that suggests a pretty significant difference. What the study seems to indicate is that there may be an ability to not only solve problems in our sleep, that our sleep is actually a time where we can engage in some critical thinking and problem solving that can help us with those unresolved puzzles and problems in our waking life, but also that there may actually be a means of cueing yourself to think about a specific problem. Now, this goes far beyond what the research would suggest, but if you wanted to actually test this out for yourself, you could do it in a pretty simple way. It wouldn't be some kind of empirical, peer-reviewed study or anything like that, but you could test it out for yourself. You could engage in some kind of difficult problem or puzzle, and you could have a unique song or soundtrack, some kind of background music associated for each distinct puzzle or problem. And if you have a smartwatch or something that tracks your sleep, and you notice that you tend to go into REM sleep at a certain time of the night, you could set a timer for your phone or whatever device to play that soundtrack at the estimated time that you go into REM sleep. And then you could wake up in the morning and immediately record your thoughts if you had any thinking about the problem, and you could revisit that problem in the morning and see if it had any impact on your ability to solve it, if you gained any new insights, you made any progress or not. Now, does this sound like science fiction or fantasy or something? Candidly, to me, it does a little bit. But in another way, it makes a lot of sense. We are wonderfully made. We have brains that we don't fully understand. And this whole channel is about cognitive biases and logical fallacies and clear thinking and problem solving and decision making. And we know that good sleep is an important part of good and clear thinking. So maybe, just maybe, we could use a simple protocol like this and test it out. And perhaps it'll give you just that edge that you need to solve that next literal or metaphorical treasure. I hope you find this interesting. I look forward to your comments.